Connections weak? Come on, Phil. How can my connection be weak? I'm on the internet.
Yeah. Are you saying it's not connecting?
Hey guys, are you seeing this okay? It just told me I've got a weak connection. I've been sat downloading videos all morning perfectly. And as soon as I put my phone up, I have a weak connection. So, actually today this is a little different. I'm here with Rod Webber, or Rod Webber's here with me.
We're here together.
And he's going to be interviewing me about Standing Rock, specifically November 20th. Actually, why don't you tell people, to start with, what you're doing?
Well, when I went out to Standing Rock, I was actually at the tail end of another documentary called Flowers for Peace. I went around to all the presidential candidates and brought them a flower as a symbolic gesture that should they become president, that there'd be peace over their term. Of course, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Carly Fiorina, there's only 3 people that wouldn't take him out of the dozens that would. Jeb Bush, as a result, regularly had me come up and pray for peace with him at his events, as did Lindsey Graham and John McCain, and again, ideologically speaking, I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum of these guys, but it gave me a platform to talk about issues that are important to me. And when Standing Rock came around, I felt as though that was even more important, despite the fact that I was busy, getting the edit for that ready for film festivals. So if you want to check that one out, it's flowersforpeace.net. But I just picked up and went to Standing Rock, and so I didn't go there with the intention of making a film. I went there because I felt compelled that I could be a help in the early stages. Moving stuff around, helping with teepees, whatever needed to be done. But when crazy direct actions and militarized police started coming out of the woodwork, it seemed that my cameraman skills and my eye for getting in there was a needed thing. So when I left shortly before Christmas, as I was driving home, it was just like, it would just be a shame not to bring some context to it. I'll just take everything I did, and it will be a film of some, I think there's a good film there, I guess is what
Absolutely.
I'm saying. And so I just wanted to do some follow-up interviews to bring some context. I felt like really the climax of things, at least while I was there, was the Night of the Water Cannons. So I've been focusing on that, and obviously you're very well known for live streaming it that night. So yeah. Perhaps it's time for me to turn the interview on you.
Well, yeah, I guess. My story, I got up there from Mississippi Stand, which was the other end of the Dakota Access Pipeline. I'd been down there for about three and a half weeks. Like most people, I turned up for one day to do one thing, which was bring some kitchen equipment and some supplies with a non-profit that I'd been traveling with, which was Grateful for Grace, who traveled around different sustainable communities, and they basically work as an artery, carrying the things they need, doing different jobs. So we put together a geodesic dome in Indiana, and then we were coming literally to one day to Mississippi Stand to drop some stuff off for the kitchen, and that one day somehow turned into about 3.5 weeks. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
And so while I was down there, I started live streaming a bit. In fact, the first night I was at Mississippi Stand, there was an action where Jessica went underneath a dump truck and looked chained on underneath a dump truck, and that was my first ever experience of direct action at all. And down there I kind of became sort of a police liaison that night, because my accent kind of gets me in a few places, and it enables me to be able to talk to some people which other people don't get that opportunity. I wasn't judged immediately.
Well, I think you're also outspoken, so that always helps, and you're diplomatic.
If my mum heard you say that, I think she'd beg to differ, but thank you. No,
How you were as a kid is not how you are as an adult, so Mom, I think he's made some great strides.
Well, thank you, brother. So from there I met actually Chris Lawson, and Chris Lawson was the state representative, was the coordinator of the Jill Stein campaign for the Green Party in Iowa. They rented a U-Haul and took some of the supplies that were left over from Mississippi Stand to Standing Rock. Plus we did a donations drive in Iowa City, where we were out for the day. we got hold of the local TV station. They came down, and there was a small piece on the local TV down in Iowa on it, and we drove up to Standing Rock. The very first day I was at Standing Rock, the first action I went on was a prayer march for forgiveness in Mandan, which was a forgiveness march for the atrocities that had happened on the clearing of North Camp on October 27th. And that was beautiful to be part of that, because it was these people that had already been completely mistreated, were having their sacred land destroyed, were having their rights for the ability to live to their beliefs that they had totally taken away from them. They were using environmental racism and environmental genocide against them, which they had been doing for a very long time. And still these people were leading this action to go and offer forgiveness to the very people that had turned the pepper spray, turned the dogs on them, because they didn't understand what they were disturbing when they were disturbing the sacred grounds. They didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know the bad energy and the consequences that it was going to bring on not just themselves, but their family. So they went to forgive them, and that was such a powerful thing to be part of. Seeing them actually shake hands with some of the very people that days before had been dragging them out of Inipis while they were in ceremony was just incredible. And then there were speakers there, and that was the first time I heard about the International Indigenous Youth Council, because there was a speaker there from them. And then Red Fawn, Standing Rock's political prisoner, her uncle was there and he spoke. So it was a really, really beautiful, beautiful day. And then from that point, at Standing Rock, I continued to try and live stream, but as you know, the signal up there was really, really difficult. And what I discovered was you could live stream kind of at some higher points, but you couldn't get right down in the action.
So you weren't on Facebook Hill, but the other hill with the flags, is that right?
Yeah, no, I wasn't up on Facebook Hill. I live streamed from the side of the road on 1806 up on the hill there. And on the night of the 20th, I remember I was in camp. I believe I was in my tent.
Actually, before we get to the 20th, can we talk about, there was just a couple other actions leading up to that. I know there was a couple direct actions with Mike Fasig on the bridge, which was kind of a negotiation with the police, then led to the actions on Turtle Island, which there was one on November 2nd, and I believe one on November 7th or 8th. Were you at either of those? The one with everyone in the water with their hands up and everyone's being pepper sprayed.
I was down briefly for one of those actions. What I found was and I'm trying to think if it was after that or before. I'm not very good at dates, so I honestly don't know. Is the honest answer that I don't know. Mm-hmm. What I found at Turtle Island was that my involvement through live streaming, which was where my skill set seemed to lie, and commentating on it, I didn't get any signal at Turtle Island. Yeah. So I was down at Turtle Island for one of the actions, and I was more involved in a support role. There was a young girl who was 16 who had been pepper sprayed and had been in the water for 15 minutes, and was involved in kind of helping get her back to medical. Also remember being involved in, I had a megaphone with me, and the elders were trying to bring some calm to the situation and trying to kind of chill the energy out, because the energy had got very raised, and there were things that were happening that were looking like they were less involved with peace and prayer, and the elders weren't feeling very comfortable with it, and they were trying to talk over the crowd, and I happened to have a megaphone, and I remember giving a megaphone to one of the elders so they could kind of be heard more there. But mostly the actions at Turtle Island wasn't something where I was massively involved.
Okay. No, I was just curious, but so November 20th, the night of the water cannons.
Yeah, I believe I was in my tent, I think, at the time, and someone came through camp yelling that, I believe he said my wife had just been shot in the face. And he'd heard someone had been shot up on the bridge. Because we'd heard earlier that people were going up to kind of try and remove the barricades, I think, that evening, and I hadn't gone up with that part of it, but when I heard that something had happened where they had started to pull weapons and people were under attack, I raced out and I went up to that hill, and I believe, if I remember rightly, I started live streaming that at about 6:27 p.m. that evening. And I didn't stop live streaming until 2:50 in the morning, I think it was, with about a 45-minute break in there to go back to camp and warm up and get something to drink and to recharge your battery. But I remember being up on that hill, and there were a lot of people that had come up there to try and live stream, but there was so many issues with being able to get streams out.
It is a tech nightmare at Standing Rock, as far as Wi-Fi and any of the computer stuff goes.
Yeah.
I mean, for those of you who don't know, I mean, we're talking about very cold conditions. At that time, it was between 20 and 25 degrees,
Yeah.
which is, it's not unmanageable. But when you're trying to fiddle around, with an iPhone or whatever your choice, your brand choice, it can be rough, especially you're holding that's beyond Pilates for one arm.
Right.
Switch to the other. Which sounds kind of pathetic. I feel like a decrepit old man when I say it like that. But really, try to hold that position for 6 hours.
Oh yeah.
Or, I mean, I'm doing the math. That was more like 8 or 9 hours.
Yeah, I think it was about 7 hours of live streaming total. There were some times I had to go
Right.
down and go into different people's vehicles. In fact, actually here in DC yesterday, while I was at the Women's March, I bumped into someone and they were like, "Hey, I don't know if you remember me, but I gave you your gloves up on the hill on the night of the 20th, and you charged your phone in my vehicle."
Wow.
I was like, all right, creator, thank you for bringing that person back, because there were so many people that helped me auxiliary because I didn't have any equipment. I was literally there with a cell phone.
Right.
And that was all I had. I believe I had one battery pack. And I didn't have any kind of rig, didn't have any kind of mic. And it was really hard to do because every time they had the lights, the big lights that were behind the blockade on the law enforcement side. And those lights would, like, the camera on the phone would like to pick up those lights and try and focus that. So if you tried to zoom in, you just got fuzz. Plus you had all the interference that was coming from whatever devices were deliberately trying to take down the feed.
Right.
And so from being up there on the hill, what I could do is I could see what was going on. I could hear what was going on. The picture wasn't a great quality picture. But what I found I was able to do was continually document what was happening and just use my voice for that. Because no matter how grainy the feed was, the sound quality was okay. So I just kept repeating what was going on, where we were, what I was seeing happening, the temperature, what they were doing with the different types of non-lethal force.
Let's be clear, they're weapons.
All right, weapons.
They're weapons.
I was trying to be diplomatic. See,
you are. So, Mom, you did a good job, but
so,
they're weapons.
Yeah, I mean, there was a whole list of things that were out that night. They had the LRAD, which is the noise cannon that's designed to disorientate. Now, bear in mind, this is dark. If I set the scene for you, this is a bridge. So, as most people know, with a bridge, you can only go either forwards or backwards, usually on a bridge. You can't go off to the side because it's over something and there's no way to go off the edge of it. Well, when you blockade the front of it, what you create is a box full of people. And what was happening that night was this box full of people that were in the dark were being bombarded with tear gas. Now, from my knowledge of tear gas, the idea of tear gas is for disbursement. So in order to disperse people need somewhere to go. If you have people in a box and you're firing multiple rounds of tear gas into a box and people can't go forwards, they can't go left and they can't go right, and they're in a crowd of people, they have two options. Option one is panic and trample each other to try and escape the box the only way they can, going backwards. Option two is to stand there and inhale clouds of tear gas. And that's what happened. People didn't panic. People did not get trampled that night. When I spoke to the medics, because I went back to camp and spoke to medics, the majority of injuries that night were from slips and trips, blunt force trauma, and hypothermia. Because as you said, it was between 20 and 25. I believe it was 23 degrees. They were using water cannons. So they had tear gas, they had the LRAD. They had water cannons. Now these water cannons were aimed directly at water protectors, which there's an irony there. They were repelling the water